Astral Chain is the latest effort by Platinum Games, the studio that brought us games like Nier Automata, Bayonetta 1 and 2, Transformers Devastation, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and of course, who could forget, TMNT. This highly anticipated hack-and-slash action-adventure game with RPG elements was published by Nintendo and released exclusively to the Nintendo Switch on August 30th of 2019. And what a game it is. High-level art direction combined with an excellent understanding of the Nintendo Switch's capabilities and limitations have brought to us what I feel is one of the best-looking games on the system to date. Of course, this is backed up with an entertaining story, original world design, and an incredibly unique combat system that is as much on brand for Platinum Games as it is off-brand. Let's dive into this crazy game first by looking at the story. Astral Chain's story happens in a time when humanity has already been driven to the brink of extinction. The human race has been centralized to a single city known as Ark, one of the only two locations this story takes place across. Monsters known as Chimera have descended upon Earth, spilling through into the world of humans through the Gateways, which is the second area the game takes place in. These monsters are wreaking havoc on anything and anyone they come across. With the Chimera also comes a form of corruption infecting humanity and the Earth with a mysterious illness known as redshift. Neither the Chimera nor the corruption can be seen by the average human being. However, there are a select few people with the ability to see these things, and of these select few people, even fewer of them have potential to help the issue, and they may even be humanity's last hope of salvation. These special few can sync with Chimera, take control of them, and use them as weapons. Chimera themselves are the greatest and perhaps the only effective weapon against Chimera. This is where our main characters come into play, Akira and his twin sister, who I named Ayami. You can edit your main character's appearance, though the editor is a bit limited at first. As you play and unlock new cosmetics, the range of the character creator expands greatly. I left mine pretty default, mostly messing with the colors just to keep the continuity of the world feeling intact. But you are free to go a little more wild than I did. Ayami and Akira have long-standing family ties to an organization known as Neuron, the government's bastion of defense against the Chimera. When it's discovered that these two twin police officers have the ability to see and control Chimera, they are immediately transferred into Neuron to undergo training and join the fight against the hostile invaders. It doesn't take long after working for Neuron for something big to happen, and basically force you, the rookie, into a position where Neuron's survival, and the survival of the human race by extension, is completely in your hands. Of course, the story goes deeper as you try to uncover the mystery of the Gateways and some of the more strange occurrences surrounding Neuron, all while a terrorist begins pushing back against the company you work for. Now, with the world so detached from our own, some semblance of humanity will be needed to anchor the story and give us something personal and more human to invest ourselves in. Astral Chain provides us with an ongoing sibling rivalry. Ayami and Akira are not always the strongest of siblings, often vying against each other for recognition and appraisal. Jealousy rears its head several times throughout the game, and we're left with the ongoing question of whether or not these characters can unify for the greater good, or if they'll let their inferiority complexes and other character flaws tear them down and subsequently tear the world down with them. The main and supporting characters in Astral Chain I honestly think are pretty fantastic. None of them get an insane amount of screen time, but they all have little events and little relationships with each other along the way that flesh them out and give them more of that human feel. Whether it's a seemingly careless and oblivious girl just trying to spread good cheer in a place where such a thing seems prehistoric,
I'm getting gloomy vibes from all around the station.
Or a girl whose cries for love went unanswered by a man dedicated to his job to the point of a fault. There's a lot to uncover and remember these people with. As Astral Chain's story continues to unfold, I did feel it left a little bit to be desired. It doesn't keep many cards hidden up its sleeve, and so a lot of it feels rather predictable. The one card it did keep hidden away, I felt wasn't properly set up by the time it was revealed. And so when they revealed the twist, though it came with some shock and awe, it did feel a bit narratively vacuous. Many points along the way, it felt like the story was just borrowing ideas from popular anime, one of which I would rank among my favorites. As you can probably tell, since I gave all of my Chimera the classic Eva Unit 1 coat of paint. Though a tad derivative, it never actually bothered me. Astral Chain doesn't put its biggest focus on telling a compelling story. This is a Platinum game, not a Yoko Taro one, and so I didn't expect a whole hell of a lot more. What Astral Chain excels at is taking you from one crazy set piece to the next, and almost constantly delivering on high-octane action. The game starts out with an insane-looking motorbike chase in a tunnel before dropping you into the real hack-and-slash combat. After the first couple chapters have gone by and the tutorials have all ended, it does something most games just can't manage to do, and it gets better and better with every passing chapter. Save for Chapter 8 anyway. That chapter was just kind of side quests the quest. But it served as a decent breather after so much insanity. The game itself isn't exactly long. If you skipped all of the side content, you could maybe finish it in about 12 to 15 hours. An average playthrough I think would take about 20 to 25 hours, as most people will want to explore the world and its various side quests. Hell, I had fun just picking up empty pop cans and throwing them in the trash. I feel like a completionist run wouldn't take much longer than 40 hours. Mind you, a great deal of that 40 hours will come from just the post-game chapter, which isn't canon. The post-game chapter does nearly double the runtime of the game with what's essentially just a series of wave battles over and over again with little to no context. In a way, it's empty content, but it's there for those looking for a challenge. And boy, does this game's challenges come in a number of places. I mentioned earlier how unique this game's combat was, and for me, getting used to it and wrapping my hands around the controls was a cumbersome and sometimes frustrating endeavor. But I'm not going to say that the controls were bad. They're simply new. I don't really have any precedent for already knowing how to play a game like this one. By that token, it might have just been very hard to adjust to, so let's take a look at the combat now in Astral Chain. Combat is mostly anchored in melee. The cornerstone of it all will come in matching the ZR button to attack and the B button to evade. Timed evades grant windows for additional special attacks, and enemy staggers during crucial moments in your combos will also grant special additional attacks that utilize both you and your Legion. You have 3 weapons you can switch between using up and down on the D-pad. You have what's basically a light baton, a heavy baton, and a gun, useful for taking down flying enemies with. Although you can switch between weapons easily, you cannot combo them together. Right and left on the D-pad is used to bring up mission notes or a camera, which is useful for taking pictures of Waifu Olive and Side Girl Marie. The big battle gimmick here comes in the form of your Legion, the chimeras that you have under your control. There are 5 of these in the game, and each one has their own set of functions, field skills, and combat abilities. For example, the Sword class Legion can probe some electronic devices. It can cut electrical signals and cure redshift in NPCs. The Beast Legion can track invisible enemies, dig, and be used as a mount. The Arm Legion can be used to lift heavy objects and doors, and also act as a hovercraft to get you over damaging ground, so on and so forth. In battle, they all have different weapon types and speeds, and affect things differently. In a battle with lots of flying units, for example, you may want to use the Arrow Legion to take them down. If there's a lot of invisible enemies, use the Beast Legion for his tracking ability. To summon a Legion, you need only press the ZL button, and to return him, you just press R. Using Legions in battle is a tough thing to learn how to do well, and for the longest time I just wasn't getting it, causing many of my early battle rankings to land with a D. And contrary to what some people might believe, I don't have much interest in the D. Legion is chained to you at all times, and can only be summoned for a brief period of time before he's automatically recalled. Because of the chain, he cannot move too far away from you, which is good, because if you're going to use him well, you'll have to have a close eye on him at all times. Using the Legion as well as the chain in unison is the key to success. An enemy set to rush you, for example, can be tripped if you manually move your Legion to one side of his path and move yourself to the other. This will cause the enemy to collide with the chain and grant you a small window to get some free hits on him with. You can also manually move your Legion in a circle around an enemy to ensnare them in the chain and stun them temporarily. Most Legion float as well, so they can be used to access areas you otherwise couldn't. You need only move them to the area, and once they're standing there, you use the chain to pull yourself to where they're standing, making traversal through the world a little more puzzle-oriented. This kind of chain jump can be used in combat too, allowing you to pull yourself into your Legion and attack anybody standing between you and them. If there's nobody between you and your Legion, you can vault off them at the end and maybe attack somebody just a little bit past them, all while avoiding the stage hazards that may litter the ground. To move your Legion manually, you have to hold ZL and then move him with the right stick, while you simultaneously move yourself with the left stick. Thing about this though is that not only is this a tad disorienting to get used to and hard to get the controls for, but it surrenders the control of your camera entirely, and the camera in Astral Chain is simply not good. There's many options for camera controls, but none really seemed to do the trick for me, where the camera was always trying to avoid walls and avoid you, but completely willing to allow hordes of enemies and your legions to utterly block your sight. This was a constant source of frustration, but seemed to only get worse as the game went along. Too many large fights against large enemies and with large legions, taking place in enclosed spaces, hallways, alleyways, and many worse small areas. But when you can't see what's going on, it's a feast for the senses. So many flashing lights, so many impactful hits. It can be a bit blinding itself sometimes, even without camera issues, but when it's all working in motion, it just feels good. And despite your Legion actually attacking on his own without your will, if you don't feel like manually controlling his every move, every button combination you can think of is mapped to some sort of mechanic. Not only does ZL summon your Legion and must be held to move him manually, but you can also combine this with Y or X to use a Legion's special skill, a skill that you set on your own, provided you've unlocked skills in the Legion's leveling tree. That's right, all of your Legions have skill trees that you level up manually. And it's not just your Legions that level up either. You can upgrade yourself through a trade of cash and items. It's not a real XP-based leveling system, but it is pretty darn important to keep up with, as upgrading your weapons will unlock more moves and abilities. By default, hitting Y in battle will cycle you to the next available Legion, and holding Y will slow down time and bring up a Legion wheel to scroll through. The X button works similar, where hitting X will use the currently equipped item, and holding X will bring up an item wheel to scroll through. It's a little tough to explain how hard this is to adjust to, where so many buttons have so many different uses, and so many button combinations are needed to pull off some otherwise simple seeming things. But it really is a challenge. Battle in general is a challenge to adjust to. It just feels like there's so much to keep up with. Who are you targeting? Are you using the right weapon? How does your health look? Good? Okay. What Legion do I have out? How much longer can I have him out? Where is he? I need him to take out the flying enemy who's preventing me from doing damage to this grounded enemy. The camera's screwing up. Where is anything? Has my skill cooldown completed yet? I really need that auto-bind skill right now. Screw it, I'll do it manually and fight the camera while moving both me and my Legion through this minefield of other enemies and stage hazards, and oh, I'm dead now. That said, when it clicks, and boy does it feel great. I don't think these controls are bad, just the camera. I think this is just the feeling of getting to learn something new for the first time. Something that in the future will be seen as having set a benchmark for a genre. Kind of like how Dark Souls and Demon Souls set a benchmark for controls, and how everybody thought that they were kind of clunky at first. I will say, however, at times the cinematic pauses in combat can get a bit extreme. It's not uncommon for games to slow a frame or two when you're being prompted for a timed hit or dodge, and in a few cases these cinematic slowdowns were so frequent that it felt like the game may have been crashing. But this is something that only happened in a bothersome way, I'd say 2 to 3 times in the entire playthrough. Now, combat isn't the only form of gameplay. Prior to most large battles, you'll be doing more legitimate police work, going around towns doing side quests for people and questioning the locals for new leads. Sometimes this requires more than scrolling through dialogue. Oftentimes, people will have small requests of you, or perhaps somebody doesn't trust you, and you'll need to use one of your legions to sneak in and eavesdrop on them. Other times, you may need to use something called Iris to find new clues. Iris is a Metroid Prime-style scanning device, where simply looking around with it will give you environmental clues and information. This is useful in battle as well as it will reveal enemy names and health to you, so add that to the checklist of things I provided before. A special function that Iris has that I thought was really cool, though a bit underutilized, was its ability to essentially hack into cameras and replay past events as if projected into the environment. It was a cool way to solve some of the mysteries or chase down a lead. These investigation sections are fun and gives you a great chance to explore the world, though some towards the beginning of the game I felt overstayed their welcome and I was just dying to get into the combat. But alas, that is where most of the tutorials were as well, so they probably weren't really as long as it felt. Now, there's more that I could say, and I could probably elaborate on the Legion's special abilities a bit more, or I could even get into the mechanics that are added much later into the game, or the special skills that you get while leveling up. That just makes combat that much harder to keep up with mechanically, but I feel like that's something you'll just have to experience yourself by playing the game. Combat really is fantastic. It's just incredibly hard to learn up front, or at least I felt it was. But from there, let's take a look at how Astral Chain actually presents itself. Not to jump the gun, but I think Astral Chain looks incredible. A great use of models, the lighting and lighting effects, particle effects and contrasting colors and character outlines. Everything here just looks so bold and stylistic. Like many Switch games, the anti-aliasing is off and the textures aren't that high quality, but unlike most Switch games, Astral Chain knows how to hide such flaws. For instance, just running around the city here, everything looks pretty darn nice in motion, especially the way your pants wrinkle around your butt while you walk. God bless Platinum. But step up to the window of a few of these places and the cracks show. 2D art cards or really low poly objects litter the game almost anywhere you want to take a close look. But with how high energy the action is in Astral Chain, it's unlikely you'll be strolling about looking for the tears in the wallpaper. An excellent use of lighting and environmental effects makes everything look so much better than it really is, and in motion, it's just insane. This is the power of good art design. So much of the game feels set in reality, but then has these little intriguing futuristic changes to things that make the world feel properly advanced, like this Dyson brand helicopter here. These things make the setting feel unique. Grounded, but unique. I can see the Dyson helicopter being a real thing in the future, and the creativity put into decisions like this from the art departments really shouldn't go unnoticed. Performance in Astral Chain is pretty solid as well, having rarely experienced any sort of legitimate slowdown. The only thing I would want to criticize here is some of the draw distance. As you explore, your legions can pick up the redshift lying around the stages, which will allow them to be summoned for longer periods of time and add to your overall completion score. However, redshift corruption is one of the first things removed in the draw distance, and so you won't be able to see it until you get a little close. The sound design of the game has a couple questionable choices, but overall it's really solid. In fact, I would say it's better than average, and that goes for the OST as well. The music in the OST ranges from some super epic symphonic pieces.
Come with me! The chopper's this way!
To some crazy gent guitar in the style of Doom 2016.
Proto-Legion.
To this? Yeah, I'm not too fond of the music in the game's central hub. To avoid calling it what we all know it is, I'm just gonna say that it's lounge porn. It's basically 90s porn music. Weird, tantric EDM stuff. It feels very out of place, but that's probably the one track that I didn't really enjoy. This is an OST that I think would definitely be worth going out of your way to purchase and listen to outside of the context of the game. Now, I played this game in English, and I thought the English cast done a really good job, with the exception of one character, Jin.
Oh, jeez. You made it. You've gotta be more careful. We're in a lot of trouble if anything happens to you.
I'm sorry, Jin, but it just sounds like you phoned all your lines in. Like you only done one take of each line and it was the first time you were ever actually reading the lines. But hey, maybe that's just the way you were directed and it's not actually the actor's fault. Otherwise, the voice cast was great. It helps that the main character is mute in this case, so there's less to criticize, but the rest of the cast carries her along very well. In closing, Astral Chain to me is a must for any Platinum fan, or any fan of Bayonetta or Devil May Cry. But be warned, it bears many similarities to games like that, but it bears just as many differences, as it comes with a completely unique spin on combat that will make the meta very hard to get used to. With some dedication and willingness to learn, this is a game that you'll want to see become a series, or at least inspire a few competent copycats. The story leaves a bit to be desired and doesn't have too many surprises along the way, but the world and the characters, whom all bear little nuggets of humanity to remember them by, they make it easily worth playing. The game looks, performs, and sounds incredible, with only a few issues here and there, the biggest of which being an uncooperative camera, which at times can be very frustrating but will never break the experience. Astral Chain is a great action game that pushes the envelope of the genre in many new ways pertaining to gameplay, but doesn't do anything remotely similar for its narrative. Despite this, it's a very easy recommendation. Though not overly long, with how intense the gameplay is, and how wild the ride becomes, the length of the game felt like it suited it very well. Any more than that and I might have started developing arthritis, so let's just say that 20 to 25 hours is a good thing with Astral Chain. Anything more might have been too much of a good thing. And that's all I'm gonna say on it. If you guys enjoyed the video, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you can. Links to my socials and my Twitter and my Patreon and all that jazz is in the description below. And as always, folks, thanks for watching.